My name is Michael Hussey. I am the interim dean at Widener Law Commonwealth, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to our annual Emergency Medical Services CLE program. This year in our pandemic world, we've had to do it a little bit differently. Rather than having one great Friday morning with our usual 3 hours of programming, we've had to spread that out on Zoom this year. And we're going to be doing an hour this week and for the next 2 weeks. And very delighted that all of you can join us for this programming. At Widener Law Commonwealth, we are committed to supporting our first responders, and we make a special effort to reach out to them to ensure that they have what they need to be successful in law school. And one of those things is also awarding an annual emergency responder scholarship funded through the generosity of Page, Wirth, and Wolfberg. And we thank them for their generosity in providing that scholarship each year to our students. I'd like to thank all of those who put this program together for their work. Former Dean Christian Johnson, Corinna Wilson, Joy Boudreau, Brian Fernball, Paula Hyder, PCN, and all of our panelists and our moderator, Doug Wolfberg, today. Thank you all for your hard work on that. And again, thank you all for joining us, and I'm looking forward to a great program today.
Thank you, Dean Hussey. Good morning, everybody. My name is Doug Wolfberg. I'll be serving as the moderator for today's panel and the subsequent 2 panels. And we have a stellar lineup for you today, and we're extremely excited to get started here. I first want to also thank Dean Hussey and Widener Law Commonwealth for their steadfast support of emergency services, veterans, and really this school, I think their commitment to those constituencies is second to none. Their programming, their scholarships, their commitment. I think if anyone on this call today knows anyone in any of those fields that's a veteran that is in emergency services, law enforcement, who's thinking about law school, they really want to come and take a look at Widener Law Commonwealth. And I'm a graduate, and I can tell you it's about the best springboard there is, folks. I too want to thank all the people that Dean Hussey mentioned for their support of the program. Christian Johnson, the immediate past dean, Joy Boudreau and Brian Fernball, and particularly Corinna Wilson, who is a lawyer, a journalist, in my book, a dynamo, who has really done the lion's share of the legwork in planning this year's program as she did last year. So Corinna, thank you so much for your outstanding work. Just briefly to introduce myself, since you'll be seeing my mug here for the next 3 weeks during this program. I've been involved in EMS since the late 1970s. I started out as a volunteer EMS provider and worked as a county EMS director, ran one of our regional councils in Pennsylvania for a few years, worked at our state council, worked in the federal government, Department of Health and Human Services for a while prior to going to law school. And I am, along with Steve Wirth, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later as the keynote speaker, I am one of the founding partners of PWW. And most proudly, I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Widener Commonwealth Law, where I teach health law. So a quick overview of the program. We'll be doing, as Dean Hussey said, an hour today, an hour next Friday, and then an hour on the 30th. Today's panel is a legislative leadership panel. Next Friday will be the local government panel. And then finally on the 30th, it is the law and policy panel, where we have some state association officials and our state EMS director and some other folks. So without any further ado, let me get into the introduction of today's panel. We are extremely fortunate to have with us the 4 chairs. And by that, I mean both chairs in both houses of the Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness committees. And I would like to introduce them, and then I will call on them for some introductory remarks, and then we'll have some Q&A. Before I do the introductions, I just want to do a few housekeeping. Each of the panelists, the legislative panelists, will provide some introductory remarks, as I said, and then we will do some Q&A. Now, to ask questions, please type those into the Zoom chat box. and I will be reviewing those during the panelists' presentations, and then we will read some of those on the air. And if you want your question directed to a particular panelist, please let me know that in the question, and I will direct that to the appropriate panelist. If it's just a general question, that's fine, and we'll let the panelists weigh in. Please keep your microphones muted throughout, if you would be so kind. And please remember that these elected officials and their staff representatives are here today to really enlighten us, to help us understand the legislative process, particularly as it relates to EMS and emergency services. We're in political season, folks. Whether you agree or disagree with their views and what they say today, or whether you agree or disagree with their politics, from working with them, I can tell you that they are all conscientious and dedicated public servants. And please, regardless of your own views, be sure to treat them with the courtesy and the respect that they deserve. So we appreciate that. So let me introduce our panelists, and then we'll hear from them, which is why we're here today. First, I'd like to introduce Senator Mike Regan. I'm going to introduce each panelist, and then I'll call on them to begin their overview. But Senator Regan is a fiscal conservative with a track record of fighting crime and protecting families. He was elected in 2016 to the 31st Senatorial District, representing parts of Cumberland and York counties. He was born and raised in Central PA. He served as a member of the U.S. Marshal Service with the U.S. Department of Justice beginning in 1988. In 1990, he was made Deputy U.S. Marshal in the Middle District of Pennsylvania and ascended to the post of the Fugitive Task Force Commander in 1995. In 2002, President George W. Bush nominated now Senator Regan to become the U.S. Marshal for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. He was confirmed by the U.S. Senate and served in that position until his retirement in 2011 after 23 years of service. Following his retirement, can't truly retire apparently, he was named Deputy Inspector General of Pennsylvania, where he directed efforts to prevent, investigate, and eradicate fraud, waste, and abuse in state agencies. He served 2 terms in the State House of Representatives after compiling more than 2 decades of law enforcement and public safety experience, as you have heard, which continues to really inform his legislative work and his successes. He serves as chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. He has been successful with the passage of the Pennsylvania GI Bill for families, the reauthorization of the state 911 law, codification of the Civil Air Patrol under the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, and as a number of measures strengthening fire and EMS in Pennsylvania. So I guess what we will do is, I see you all queued up, Senator Regan. So since we've done that introduction, why don't you go ahead, and then as each panelist is ready for their statement, I'll introduce them in sequence. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate you all. Glad to be with you. It's an honor to be with you this morning. And I just want to maybe highlight something that Doug said regarding, partisanship. Well, I think we're very fortunate that we are in a committee and we do business as a committee, which is completely devoid of any kind of partisanship. I mean, all the bills that I will talk to you about today, as a matter of fact, were not only bicameral, but completely bipartisan. So I think when it comes to dealing with the people who service in EMS and fire and our veterans, I think partisanship goes out the window, and I'm very happy to say that. And I'm very honored to serve with the other chairs who do just a fantastic job. Big thank you to Widener Law for facilitating this important discussion. It's hard to believe that a year's gone by since the last symposium and how much the world has changed since then. And yet the EMS providers, they've been taking it on the chin almost nonstop during this pandemic. Last year's symposium was titled, "The Future of Emergency Medical Services in Pennsylvania. Are we at a crisis point?" with a question. And I think my answer was yes then, and it still is yes. But we have taken some solid steps. With the help of our counterparts in the House and Senate, we have recently done some really great things, and I will give credit to my staff. You know, Nate Silcox has been like a honey badger on this thing. He's been fighting forever with, you're not fighting, but I mean, negotiating forever to try to get these EMS and fire bills brought to the forefront. And recently he's been very successful, and I'm very proud of him. So I'd like to highlight a few, which when coupled together will be a great assistance to the EMS community. Starting with House Bill 1459. It was a bipartisan measure sponsored by Representative Mike Schlossberg from the Allentown area and Frank Ferry. That is now Act 69 of 2020, the Emergency Responder Mental Wellness and Stress Management Act. Provides EMS and first responders with necessary support for the mental stressors of their job. It establishes a confidential hotline within the Department of Health for first responders to call, and requires the department to issue guidelines to assist first responders who are dealing with PTSI or traumatic brain injuries as a result of their employment. Additionally, the department will establish peer-to-peer and critical incident stress management programs for first responders, which encompasses 911 operators, coroners, correction officers, EMS responders, firefighters, and peace officers. This legislation, based on the recommendation of the SR6 Commission report, which we hold dear and is very important, and we chip away at that thing as much as we can. And as a former U.S. Marshal, I am cognizant of the fact that our first responders are exposed to things in their line of work that no person should ever have to see. In turn, they need support for processing what they saw and how it affected them. Mental health must be a priority in the work we are doing in Harrisburg. This is a recurring theme for me, particularly with respect to the prevalence of veteran suicide, the potential for increased suicides and drug overdose deaths due to isolation requirements of COVID-19, and the need to assist our younger generation in identifying mental health issues early and getting them any needed assistance. Moving on to House Bill 1838, another important recommendation of the SR6 Commission was House Bill 1838, sponsored by Representative Martin Causer, which is for the first time since 1985 would increase the fees that go into the Fines for Emergency Medical Services Operating Fund, better known as MSOF. I think we're all familiar with that. This legislation would give an infusion of $11 million into our EMS system, would also help fund the previously mentioned Emergency Responder Mental Wellness and Stress Management Act. Furthermore, the bill would increase from 10 to 30% the amount that is directed to rural and underserved areas. And finally, it would task our Legislative Budget and Finance Committee with reviewing the declining revenues in the MSOF fund. This measure is currently before the full Senate, and I expect to receive a vote next week. And I expect it to pass unanimously. Last year, an audience member asked, what are we doing that is bold or maybe outside the box? And thanks to the County Commissioners Association for putting together a working group to follow up on the SR6 report, and thanks to bipartisan work of Senators Tom Kearney, Tom Killian, Lisa Baker, Pam Iovino, and all of our staffs, we now have Senate Bill 1274, which would permit for county-wide public safety authorities. This legislation would give counties the ability to create county-wide authorities for fire and EMS services without the heavy-handedness of the top-down approach. A number of roundtables were held with stakeholders, and a public hearing was held by our committee in Pike County, and we were ready for this option for sure. There is a chance that we may move this bill out of committee this session, but we have been working through a couple of details. Obviously, you know, many times these bills get so close to passing the committee, and then there's just a couple of details that need to be worked out. But I think the legislation has been put in good position. Ultimately, it's my hope that this legislation may provide a more regional approach to providing for fire and EMS services in order to save the many financially insolvent EMS agencies that provide life-sustaining purpose, COVID or non-COVID. The Steer Clear Law, another very important safety measure. On September 14th, I participated in an EMS Memorial Day service where the bell was rung for 63 EMS providers who have, over the years, lost their lives in the line of duty. The The following week, the Senate took up Senate Bill 1281 by Senator Doug Mastriano that would enhance our state's steer clear law, increasing penalties for not moving over to another lane when an accident has occurred. Furthermore, PennDOT will be charged with educating the public on their responsibilities. This legislation could be voted on also next week in the House of Representatives. Through this legislation, we can help end these needless tragedies and the deaths of our great men and women in EMS who are many times volunteers who are out there on the highways trying to save lives, and unfortunately, they lose their own. Moving along to House Bill 1869, now is Act 17 of 2020, which allows the Department of Health to provide EMS agencies in the Commonwealth a waiver from staffing requirements. The waiver may only be obtained for extraordinary reasons as determined by the department on a case-by-case basis and in the best interest of the EMS system and patient care. The provisions of this bill will expire 3 years from the date of enactment. Now, Senate Bill 1122. During the COVID-19 crisis, we felt it was very important to assist our fire and EMS agencies as they had lost a number of their revenue sources, particularly EMS with fewer cars that were on the road and less accidents. I mean, that's a good thing, but I mean, it obviously had an impact on us financially. Senator Joe Pittman sponsored Senate Bill 1122, now Act 26 of 2020, that will provide a $50 million in federal CARES funding to fire and EMS. There have been a number of hiccups in the rollout of this crucial funding, but the fire commissioner announcing last week that the funds can be used for revenue replacement. I believe the funding will soon be announced as it relates to that bill. House Bill 1673, the omnibus fire legislation. I think this was really, again, I'll mention Nate. This was, many times when there's this many pieces of legislation and it's in both bodies and and we're dealing in a very bipartisan way. It's kind of like herding cats, how tough it is to get one bill passed as opposed to a group of bills together. He's done a fantastic job. I'd like to note that next week, the Senate is poised to take it up, 1673, which is an omnibus piece, fire and EMS legislation. As amended by our committee last week, this bill includes 13 measures that have passed either Senate or House this session relating to the Fire Commissioner's Office, the Fire and EMS Grant Program, Fire Relief Program, the Volunteer Loan Assistance Program, and property tax credits for volunteer first responders. Among the components of these bills are state fire commissioners' duties, reports directly to the governor and be confirmed by the Senate, serves as a primary representative for fire services in the Commonwealth, develops curriculum and provides and assists in the coordination of fire, rescue, and emergency service training, including online training and issue certifications, administers the State Fire Academy, assists the statewide recruitment and retention efforts, serves as the chair of the State Fire Advisory Board, with the legislation reconstitutes and which is charged with reviewing legislation, establishing innovative programming and standards of cover, and operating the Pennsylvania State Fire Academy and other duties. Reauthorizes, now we're going to talk a little bit, about fire and EMS grants, and it reauthorizes the fire and EMS grant program for 4 years, places the administration of the fire grant program under the fire commissioner, adds the following eligible use of grant dollars, educating the public regarding fire prevention and community risk reduction, recruitment and retention programs, volunteer firefighter length of service programs, construction savings account, revenue loss for grants, and issued in 21 and 22. Then there's fire relief programs, places under the administration of the program under the Fire Commissioner's Office, permits funds to be used for training, nutrition supplies, recruitment and retention, length of service awards programs, facilities, vehicle equipment, obtaining or renewing commercial driver's licenses, and stipends not to exceed $1,500 per year. Calls for the State Fire Advisory Board to review and make recommendations on the current funding formula. Volunteer loan assistance programs is next, and that increases the loan amounts for facilities, vehicles, and equipment, formalizes the loan application review committee, places a question before the voters in the 2021 primary asking if they approve of municipal paid fire companies being eligible for loans. And that brings us to volunteer first responder tax credits, which I think we can all agree has been something that's been talked about for a long time and very important. Authorizes counties to establish property tax credits for volunteer first responders. Authorizes school districts to do the same. Permits municipalities to work through COGS, which is the Council of Governments, to establish earned income and property tax credits for volunteer first responders. Like I said, portions of 13 bills, both House and Senate measures, as well as Republican and Democrat measures, were incorporated into this bill. As such, this legislation is bipartisan and bicameral and was the 2018 Senate Resolution 6 report, which puts forth 92 individual recommendations to improve our fire and EMS services in Pennsylvania. While this legislation does not incorporate all the SR6 recommendations, it addresses a good number of them. And so it is my belief that this is one of the most significant, it's not one of the most significant, I think it is the most significant piece of legislation addressing fire and EMS that we have taken up in the General Assembly. You know, I was very fortunate to serve for many years as a U.S. Marshal, and I served along EMS and have always had respect for the critical role they play in the healthcare system. As such, I am pleased to help serve the EMS community in my capacity as chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. I know that my co-chairs and my co-chair and the chairs in the House feel the exact same way. Along those lines, I'm very pleased to work beside Steve Barrar. As you all know, Steve has been doing this job for I think about a decade and has devoted his life to fire and EMS and Veterans Affairs, has done just an incredible job. He's so well respected on both sides of the aisle. And those are going to be big shoes to fill for the House of Representatives. He's done so many things and supported so many important bills that have done such great things. And I would be remiss if I didn't also thank my co-chair, Pam Iovino, who came in midstream this session and didn't miss a beat. And wow, no, she is with us today. It's my script here says she's not here, but I see that she is here. Thank you for being here, Chris. And also, or excuse me, Pam, and also Chairman Chris Sainato for working with us this session. He is always very willing to work in a bipartisan manner for all the people who serve us. I would like to thank Widener Law for hosting today's forum to shine the spotlight on EMS and the necessary steps to reverse the course and bring it back from its current crisis point. And to those of you who are EMS providers, I express my deep gratitude for your dedication and service to your communities. And know that we will continue to do all we can in this legislature to ensure the future of the good work that you do. Thank you very much again, Doug, for having me. Very interesting to me that you've been in VMS since the 1970s. You must have a youthful filter on your camera, which I need to get on there because you look like just a young man. But thank you for what you're doing here today. I think this is very valuable. And God bless everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. I was 4, by the way, just for the record, when I started. So it's a real shame that there's nothing going on legislatively. What an incredibly full plate.
Sorry to put you through that.
Pardon me?
Sorry to put you through that.
No, it's fantastic. And I think everybody really benefited from hearing all of that. So thank you so much, Senator Regan. Please stand by. We will get into some Q&A after the other presentations. So thank you again. It's now my pleasure, and thanks also for the great segue, Senator Regan, to introduce Representative Barrar. Representative Steve Barrar is the Majority Chairman of the House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. He's held this position, as you heard Senator Regan say, for the past 10 years. He holds the distinction of the longest serving Majority Chairman of this committee. He's rounding out his 12th term as State Representative for the 160th District, which encompasses parts of Delaware and Chester counties. He's a Navy veteran and a veteran of the Vietnam War, former business owner and a township commissioner. And as you heard, Chairman Barrar is not seeking re-election this year, which will now give him more time to focus on his passion as an avid sailor on the Chesapeake Bay and plenty of time to spend with his family and cherished grandchildren. Chairman Barrar has been a great friend of the EMS community. He's been at the helm of many important issues and accomplishments for the EMS stakeholders and the safety of the public in general. Sir, congratulations on your retirement. I echo what Senator Regan said. You will be greatly missed, and we all wish you Godspeed on your future endeavors. And there's not much that has happened legislatively in emergency services without your steadfast involvement and support. And we all owe you a debt of gratitude, sir. So with that, thank you again, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Doug, for the introduction and the kind words. Also, Senator Regan, I appreciate the things you say. To hear from you, it means the world to me. It has been a very long career, 24 years in the House. When I came here, I thought I'd do 10 years and go home, but I've just loved the work so much that I always say that I think the hardest thing I will ever do in my life is to shut down my office and walk away from the job, because there's still so much to be done, especially in the area for our first responders. They still, unfortunately, I feel they're underserved by the legislature, even though the chairman has read a long list of things that we're doing, and it's sometimes it just doesn't seem like we're doing enough, especially in the area of the financial needs of the EMS community. We've seen this year with the impact of COVID that the stress that's put on these men and women who serve the EMS community, and we can't thank them enough. I know they were the people putting their life on the line, just going out doing the job that they do every day. But now all of a sudden it's something that there's a virus that they could take home to their wives and their kids who may have, other illnesses that could lead to serious complications for them. But I've been fortunate, 10 years here in this committee. We've done some great things. I've met thousands of really great first responders who are as every bit as dedicated as we are to our job, they are to their job. One of the things that has bothered me in the past is that, it doesn't seem like the issues before this committee get enough. They're not the glitzy and glamorous issues that like the budget and some of the stuff that comes out of judiciary, but the issues we do here are the most important issues, I think, to the people of Pennsylvania. Just like the senator, I've been fortunate. I've had two staffers, Rick O'Leary and Sean Harris, who have worked their tail off, and they do a great job of making me look great. So, which is, I think, their mission in life, at least for the past 10 years. But they're very dedicated to this community, and I can't thank them enough for the things they've done for us. But if you go back and you look at the work with SR6 that we did, and we've really formulated on both sides on the Senate and the House, Republican, Democrat, and the senator hit the nail on the head when he said this is probably the most nonpartisan committee in Harrisburg. We always say, and Chairman Sainato and I talk about it, we say there's no Republican way or Democrat way to help our veterans, to help our first responders. I said it is doing the right thing to get the attention to the issues. And sadly, with the work that was put into a 2-year mission that a lot of people volunteered to be part of, SR6, we reported 16 bills out of our committee in a matter of, I think it was 2 or 3 days. And sadly, it got no press around the state, which really bothered me, because a lot of times people say to me, what's the most important issue in the state? And I will talk about the closing of fire companies and EMS companies, and that the crisis that exists in our EMS community. And people go to me, really? Now, I'm fortunate. I live in a neighborhood, an area of Delaware County where I can throw a baseball in just about any direction, find a firehouse or an ambulance company not far from me. If I call an ambulance, which I did 2 years ago, I had a health issue and called an ambulance, and within less than 5 minutes, I had an ambulance backing up my driveway. And I'm very fortunate, but we know most of the state doesn't have that luxury. But we've been trying hard to get some of these issues accomplished. A year ago, or last session, the one bill that we'd gotten done was a 5-year work that it took us to get the treat no transport bill signed into law. Today it is into law, but people say to me, why did it take 5 years to get a common sense piece of legislation like that done? And I said, because the insurance industry opposed it from day one until we were actually able to educate them that this was going to save the insurance companies money at the end of the day. Then finally, as soon as they jumped on board with it, we were able to get it moved, signed into law very, very quickly. But for the first 4 years, they opposed it because they thought that this was going to be a giveaway. And the insurance industry, unfortunately, has been not, I don't think they've been an equal partner in helping our communities get to where they need to be when it comes to, a fair reimbursement for our ambulance companies. And, one of the big bills that we did and still hard fought bills that was done with SR6 was the direct payment to ambulance companies. Probably the most common sense, easy bill in history to pass and get signed into law, has been lingering out there for probably 14 or 15 years. I've sponsored the bill one legislative session. I know Frank Ferry has. It started with Bernie O'Neill back in probably about 12, 15 years ago. He was the sponsor of the bill for a long time. And again, this bill is tied up. The insurance industry lobbies against it, and they bring up all kinds of false arguments of how this is going to destroy their network. Well, the difference with direct payment for the ambulance company versus direct payment to a dentist is the fact that when you dial 911, they have to respond. They can't say, hey, you didn't pay us for the last 5 visits. We're not going to respond to this one like your dentist can do. Your dentist can say, hey, you didn't send a check to me from the insurance, the reimbursement that you received to me. I'm not going to fix your teeth. And, you can always find another dentist to take that on. But the direct pay is really about a fair reimbursement and a prompt reimbursement to help keep these ambulance companies in business. When I get calls from companies that tell us they're shutting down, the first thing I ask them is, I said, if we'd had direct pay, would it have helped you stay in business and keep your doors open? And every one of them has said to me, oh my God, that is one of the primary reasons we have to close our doors. My ambulance company in my own community has told me that they are constantly chasing down around $200,000 a year trying to get reimbursed by the insurance company, but the check goes to the patient, the subscriber, and a lot of times, especially in periods of financial desperation, people keep the check and don't send it. So, I would love to see that get done in the next legislative session. If we don't get it done in the sine die session, I think our focus in sine die is going to be mostly dealing with budget issues. And I know there's some other COVID issues that still have to be rectified. But the senator touched on the Causer bill about the MSOF money, that there'll be a increase in the fee that will go to training. It'll highlight the problems in our rural communities for the ambulance companies out there. And I can only, talking with people like Tina Pickett, who's talked to me in the past about, some people will literally wait 30 minutes to an hour for an ambulance to show up at their home, which is just, in my opinion, is just outrageous. And we really need to address that. I know with the situation I had, the damage could have been very, very serious if I had not gotten to the hospital as quickly as I was able to. Another part of the bill, I don't know if the senator touched on this, but there's a requirement in the Causer bill, House Bill 1838, that the Legislative Budget Finance Committee will take another review at this. If you remember, they did a review about 5 years ago. I serve on that committee also. And we did looking at the way the MSOF money was spent at the regional EMS offices there. And we were kind of, I think, a little appalled at how much of it was spent on administration, on salaries, benefits, and stuff like that, and not enough of it was getting out to the ambulance community. In this bill, it'll require the Legislative Budget Finance Committee to take a look at, first of all, how the courts are collecting the money, make sure that it's put on the appropriate fines when they come to court. A lot of times the judges forget about this little bit of the fine, and the money's not sent to the proper funding. And we've complained about that for many years, to get the courts to do a better job of collecting the MSOFT money out there. And the senator also mentioned the fact that the $50 million should be available very shortly to the to the EMS community, and it will allow them to use the money. And this was part of the struggle, was to make sure that they could use it to replace the money that they've lost because their inability to do the fundraising that they've done in the past, which, we know a lot of our ambulance companies operate on, a shoestring budget, and to lose that ability to raise money within your community is going to be very difficult. But, I could go on for a half an hour, but I will end it here because I know there's a bunch of questions that the participants want to ask of us. But Doug, I thank you and Widener University for putting this event on. This is, I think, my second year attending this, and maybe I get an invite in the future to come be a participant. So I love it. But this has been a labor of love for me, and really it breaks my heart to leave in some ways. But 24 years, it's time for someone to, someone new and more energetic than me to step into those shoes and run with the ball. And I'm hoping to God that we get a chairman next year who isn't looking at this committee as just a stepping stone to a better chairmanship, because I was offered every chairmanship in the House, and I could have taken my pick of anything I wanted. And I told the speaker I was staying here, and he looked at me kind of surprised, and he said, you're number 3 in seniority, you can have anything you want. And I said, well, I thought about the insurance industry because I have a big beef. As anybody that knows me knows, I've spent a lot of my time battling the insurance industry. I mean, I have the post-traumatic stress workers' compensation bill that we've been fighting for. We thought we were going to get it moved out of the House before November, but that has been tied up. But the insurance industry, in my opinion, has I've beat them up pretty good every chance I get. I don't think they're a fair player in this world, and but unfortunately they have a lot of control in the legislative process. I would hope to see someday that their influence over legislative policy will dwindle some, but only the future will tell us where we're going with this. But I thank you for the time that you've given me, and look forward to the questions. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Representative Barrar, and you're always welcome to come back to this program in the future, and you can maybe do a seminar on how great retirement is.
Thanks.
So if you could please stand by, sir, for Q&A after the other 2 panelists have done, we'd appreciate that very much. Quick reminder for all of the attendees and participants, please do be typing your questions into the chat box. I will be looking at those during the panel, and we'll get to some Q&A after the completion of the last 2 members of the panel after they make their statements. So please do be putting those questions in the question box, if you would, while we're going through here today. Our next, and folks, I can't tell you what a privilege it is to just read these bios of these amazing legislators that have joined us here today. Particularly this next, well, all of them, but these are, there's just no end to the impressive accomplishments of these panelists that we're honored to have with us today. Senator Pam Iovino represents the 37th State Senatorial District, which includes parts of Allegheny and Washington counties. She's dedicated her life to public service, as you're going to hear in this bio, serving 23 years in the U.S. Navy and representing veterans at the federal and local levels prior to her election to the Pennsylvania State Senate. After receiving her commission from Officer Candidate School and graduating with distinction in 1980, her Navy service included tours as a missile maintenance officer, network warfare program manager, congressional liaison, and 4 commanding officer assignments. including the Naval and Marine Corps Reserve Center, Pittsburgh. Her military awards include the Legion of Merit Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal 3 times, Navy Commendation Medal, Navy Achievement Medal, National Defense Service Medal, twice, 2 awards, and the Armed Forces Reserve Medal. Senator Iovino attained the rank of captain, retired from the Navy in 2003 upon nomination by President George W. Bush to serve as Assistant Secretary for Congressional Affairs at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. She was unanimously confirmed by the U.S. Senate to serve at the VA, where she was chief advocate for all legislative matters on Capitol Hill for our nation's 25 million veterans. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege to introduce Senator Pam Iovino. And ma'am, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Doug. Good morning, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here. Let me just, much of what I have to say has already been covered, but just let me say it from me directly to all of you. First of all, thank you to all our co-sponsors, Widener Law, Commonwealth Law and Government Institute for hosting this again, to Paige, Wolfberg, and Wirth, the Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute. Greetings to all my colleagues and fellow chairs that are here and part of this panel this morning. I'd also like to thank the EMS personnel joining us today and those across Pennsylvania for your selflessness and sacrifice in carrying out your duties to protect the public's health and well-being. And now you're doing it in the midst of a pandemic. You continue to protect us on the front lines across the state, now exposed to new risks, yet never shying away from the same call to serve, now with greater personal risk to yourself. So thank you once again for all that you have done and for all that you continue to do. It is a great pleasure to join you here again this year, albeit virtually, for another legislative panel discussion about EMS in Pennsylvania. There's no need for me to preach to the choir about how the pandemic has exacerbated the financial pressures and uncertainty that EMS agencies are already experiencing. Helping you achieve enough financial security to continue serving your communities for years to come is a top legislative priority of mine and my colleagues that are joining me here this morning. We've made some progress, but there's more to be done. We've already heard mention of the $50 million in funding that came from the federal CARES money for EMS, fire and EMS emergency relief grants that the General Assembly approved, and we are getting that money out the door. We also appropriated $50 million in CARES money for hazard pay for frontline workers, and unfortunately, EMS personnel did not receive money through that round of funding. We've intentionally held back at the state level about $1.3 billion of the CARES monies, CARE money allocations to have on hand as we evaluate the unfolding needs that the pandemic was going to present. And I want to tell you that passing more hazard pay funding, and this time to include EMS personnel, is something I'm pushing for, not just as a member of this committee, but also from the Senate Appropriations Committee. I'd be hard-pressed to think of any group of people who put themselves more at risk in the pandemic response than EMS. And I think there's broad acknowledgement that the $50 million was not enough statewide for the hazard pay program. So I'm hopeful that we do reach agreement and we see more of that in the remaining funds that we're going to allocate here very soon. Moving beyond emergency preparedness funding, I'm also interested in exploring more structural solutions to ensuring your long-term sustainability as EMS public servants. This has already been mentioned, but one exciting possibility is the establishment of countywide public safety authorities. This model provides another tool in the toolbox and an alternative to consolidation. As was mentioned, the Senate Veterans Affairs Emergency Preparedness Committee in the Senate had a very informative hearing about this concept in August, and it has the potential to be successfully implemented rural, suburban, and urban areas to benefit from it. There's also legislation in the Senate to institute the countywide authority. There's also legislation in the Senate to institute this countywide authority as was mentioned, Senate Bill 1274, introduced by one of our Senate colleagues, Senator Tim Carney. And I'd be interested in hearing more about this from your perspective as we do move into the panel here. And finally, one other update I'd like to mention, which aims to create a safer environment for responders on our road, and that is Senate Bill 1281, would strengthen the bill's steer clear law by rebranding it Move Over for greater public awareness, and would also increase fines and penalties for those who fail to move over or slow down. This bill passed the Senate and is in the House currently. Before I close here, I'd like to also offer my congratulations and to Representative Barrar and his eminent retirement after an extremely distinguished career. And so from one sailor to another, I'd like to wish you fair winds and following seas. I'll close there, and I look forward to a great conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Senator Iovino. We appreciate that very much. Our final panelist this morning is Michael Hillman, who is here representing Representative Chris Sainato. Michael Hillman is the Democratic Executive Director of the Emergency Preparedness and Veterans Committee, a position he has served in for a little over 2 years. He's worked in the House of Representatives in a variety of roles over the past 14 years and is honored to be here today representing Chairman Sainato before the EMS community. So Mike, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Doug. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I am indeed very honored to be sharing this virtual stage with, I mean, just hearing all the accolades of the chairs of this committee is just overwhelming and humbling. And thank you for, the small part that I get to play in this. I'll keep it brief. I want to get this over to the questions and let the chairs have their time. But I do want to thank everyone on behalf of Chairman Sainato. I want to, thank Widener Law Commonwealth. I want to thank Dean Hussey, Doug, Joy, Corinna, of course, the chairs of the committees, and all of you out there who are doing the hard work. As Senator Iovino said, we talk about frontline workers and who's more of a frontline worker than an EMS, an EMT, a paramedic. You guys, I want to echo what the senator said, hazard pay, come on, it just makes sense. Let's get that done. Just wanted to hit on a few of the bills. I know Senator Regan went through a laundry list of them, but a few of them that we're proud of here on our side that we moved forward, including House Bill 1834, which was Chairman Sainato's bill to reauthorize the fire and EMS grant programs, and also his House Bill 1786, which would create a first responder loan forgiveness program for indebted college graduates who serve as active members of an EMS agency, volunteer fire company, or volunteer rescue company. Our big accomplishment that we've been working on for several years here was House Bill 1459, now Act 69 of 2020. Representative Schlossberg worked, with Representative Farry on that one to give us the Emergency Responder Mental Wellness and Stress Management Act. And of course, when COVID hit, as you all know, ambulance agencies really took a hit with fewer calls, revenues down, and you're putting your lives on the line out there. Of course, early on, the governor created a waiver for ambulance staffing, and then we backed that up with some legislation to make that statute. And also, Representative Snyder took the lead on putting out there the idea of the COVID fire and EMS grant program, which of course Senator Pittman and others ran with. And these have all been great bipartisan accomplishments. And with that, I'm going to hand it off. Love to hear some questions, and thank you all once again for letting me participate, and take care.
Mike, thank you so much. And please thank Representative Sainato for us. Folks, reminder, please put your questions in the question bar on the chat feature in Zoom. We are getting a number of comments, just thanks and expressions of gratitude for all of the elected officials and the work that they've done, and certainly I would echo that. I am going to raise a few questions, and I'm going to direct those to one of the panelists particularly, just mix those up a little bit. And but after the primary panelist that I asked to answer the question weighs in, I would certainly like to invite any of the other panelists to be heard on that question before I raise another question. I'd also like to mention that both legislative elected officials and lawyers are two professions that get paid by the word. So we have run a little long on our panel today, which is just fine. And my partner, Steve Wirth, has graciously agreed to come back to next week's panel, where we have actually fewer panelists and a little bit more time, and he will give the keynote address next week during the local government panel. So Steve, thank you so much for standing by. The first question I'd like to direct to Senator Regan, and that question is, what advice would you have for EMS agencies across the Commonwealth who want to establish relationships, who maybe don't know how that process works? I've heard it said that relationships are the currency of the legislative process. What advice would you have for EMS agencies at the local level to establish those relationships, introduce themselves to their local elected officials, get to know their staffs? What are the kinds of things you would suggest so they can raise their visibility in the legislative process?
Well, I would say that, just by the nature of their desire to serve and the business that they do, they don't have a lot of time to go around and hang around the Capitol all day and, try to get in, work into legislators' schedules, because, during session days, when typically we're all there, we're running from meeting to meeting and place to place, and it's difficult to do. And it's just that they're not typically not the type. Public servants are quiet. They go, get up and go to work, and do their job, and they go home to their families, and they're not really political minded people. So, I think it's important, to maybe have a representative who speaks on their behalf. We do have those folks who come around and talk to us from time to time, but the message is so loud, it's so clear, it's so prevalent, how we should, as legislators, reach out and support these agencies who do nothing but save people's lives. What could be more important than that? But, sometimes because of the deluge of information we're getting on all kinds of sources and all kinds of bills and all kinds of issues, maybe it's not at the forefront. So, if you can't just, with your presence of mind, look out and see the ambulance whip by with its lights and sirens on, how important that is to our communities. I think that if they can do it, and they can find a way to just, when there's a bill that's very important to them, to make their way over to the Capitol, to knock on doors, or go to a district office of a senator or a representative and just talk. It's very effective sometimes, when legislators can put a face to an occupation or to an issue. So, it's important. I think that's maybe a way. But then again, as I mentioned in my first part of my comments, is that many times I don't think first responders are wired that way. I can probably tell you in the last 8 years since I've been in the legislature that I think we had law enforcement officers come in maybe once or twice on issues that are, very important. It's just not in their kind of their personalities, but can encourage it. You don't need to come see me. I'm fighting the fight every day, but there may be some they need to talk to. Thank you.
Senator Regan, other senators, or Senator Iovino, please.
Yeah, just real briefly, I want to, there was, for good reason, Senator Regan made a great point of pointing out the work that our staffs put in doing these things. So that's nearly the equivalent of talking to the member. So I'd say our legislative directors, our executive directors are also part of that circle. And I'll speak for myself, but 253 members of the General Assembly, I think, would say to you that the only way we write good policy is when we hear from the stakeholders. So it is welcome. It is most welcome.
Thank you, Senator Iovino. Representative Barrar, please.
Yeah, and I think Senator Regan made a great point. These people who work our EMS community, a lot of them are quiet. They don't know how to ask for help. They're out there helping on the front lines, but when it comes time to ask for the help that they need to keep their health in good order through mental health policy changes and things, they don't know how to ask. It's like I always say, the most uncomfortable part of my job is asking for money. To them, for my campaigns, for them, it's different because they're asking people to help them, and I don't think they're comfortable there. I think it is a responsibility on us to go to them, knowing that there is such a crisis, and we hold roundtables with them. We meet with our EMS people, but we're always at their call, and we want them to know that. But I think we need to reach out to them more and explain to them. Senator Regan, Chairman Regan just went through a long list of things we've done. I can tell you, probably 10% of the people in the EMS community are aware that any of this legislation is pending, and we need them to rally for us in the community that these things are out there and they need help with it. But they'll do their fundraising drives, they'll be out here doing this, but when it comes time to actually ask help, and I think they feel they're imposing too much on us by coming to our office and asking for help. I always bring this up at our dinners that we do with our fire and EMS companies around banquet time when they do their banquets and award programs, but they really need to become much more vocal and to reach out to their legislators. I'll tell you, I have 15 age-restricted communities in my district, so you can imagine with these different 55 and up communities that you have. Every time an ambulance pulls into their neighborhood, the word runs through the neighborhood and like who was it, what was wrong, why were they in front of your house, and that type of thing. So they understand the value of that ambulance, and they understand the meaning when that ambulance pulls into their neighborhood, especially in some of the communities that I have. You have to be 65 just to get in there, and they know chances are that it's one of their neighbors that is suffering a serious some type of serious condition for the ambulance to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Barrar. We have about 3 minutes remaining, and we have a number of questions, but I do want to convey to the panelists that the majority of the comments put onto the Zoom chat box are just, again, expressions of thanks for your leadership and the insight that you're providing here today. And that seems to be a unanimous sentiment from the participants. So I wanted to convey that once again. Very quickly, there is a substantive question here about the direct pay legislation. So Representative Barrar, while we have you on screen, this may be your bailiwick, sir, and that is, I'm going to paraphrase it, and that is the issue of the direct pay legislation requiring the EMS agencies to be direct participating providers to achieve their direct payment goals, as opposed to some other health professions that don't have that requirement to sort of be forced into participating provider or network agreements with the insurance companies. And I was wondering, and this question is asking, what about the sort of the parity and how EMS has been treated with direct pay compared to other health professions. And can you speak to that?
Well, I think the problem is they're not being treated any different. The insurance industry is absolutely opposed to allowing any type of outsiders, of their network to benefit from what their network gets. So they say the network will fall apart if that happens. So, the argument is that we give it to, and actually the dentist had a bill come through our house just several weeks ago, and we still haven't been able to get the EMS bill to move. But again, the dentists have paid professional lobbyists that are working the halls and making sure that this legislation gets some attention. And unfortunately, we have your organizations has citizen lobbyists that may not be as affected. But I've argued with the insurance industry for 10 years that this is not going to mean the destruction of their network. And because a lot of the companies are within their network, the ones that do a lot of transporting, they have to join the network to stay in there. So the biggest problem here is that the reason they won't join the network is because they're not sure they can get a fair reimbursement. And then now we have the issue of that this is being lumped in as a problem with the surprise balance billing. And again, that will, if we pass that legislation, we know it'll be devastating to a lot of ambulance companies around the state.
Thank you, Representative Barrar. I know that our whole profession is going to miss your clear-eyed approach and your strong voice on those issues with regard to how we interact with the insurance industry. And you just mentioned the surprise billing term, and that's dominating some of the headlines right now. And I think from an industry perspective, it would be nice if we could call that what it really is, and that's surprise coverage. I don't think there's any surprise that healthcare providers bill patients for services. I think the surprise is finding out that the insurance companies either don't pay an adequate amount to those providers or don't cover the claims, leaving the providers to bill the patients directly. And I think that's really where the surprise comes in. And I think we have to label that for what it is, which I would imagine you wouldn't disagree with that statement.
Right, I'm going to steal that from you next time I'm speaking on this bill. I think that's the perfect analogy of where we're at today.
I'm an attorney. I get 1/3 of all royalties on that, the use of that. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me quickly ask Senator Regan for any closing thoughts he has, since we are almost out of time.
Hello.
Yeah.
Senator Regan?
Hi, yes, Doug, thank you very much, and I'll keep it very brief. Just thanks to my co-chairs, my fellow chairmen on this in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Just great people who are doing the best thing they can do for the people of EMS. And biggest thank you goes to those who are out there doing the work. I mean, we sit in our cushy offices and try to do things that are right for you, but the people who are out there, you know, risking their lives and working all hours of day and night to do things for the great men and women of the people of the state of Pennsylvania are the ones who deserve all the credit. And I know I speak for all of us when I say we will work extremely hard, continue to work extremely hard for all of you. So thank you very much, Doug. Thanks to Widener. It's been a nice panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Iovino, any closing thoughts?
I think Senator Regan covered it very nicely, and I appreciate the invitation to participate in this each year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Barrar, any other additional thoughts from you, sir?
Just that I will miss these issues. I'll tell you, it'll be, you know, it'll be hard for me to walk away, but I'm always here. And I know a lot of the EMS people will, hopefully they'll call me if they need help with an issue. And I still know a lot of people up on the Hill. So I'm looking forward to still being around and working with you. Thank you,
sir. And Christian Johnson, I thought I heard you jumping in there. Any thoughts from you?
No, just thank you very much. This has been a special project in particular for Doug and Steve's law firm. We appreciate their support here at the law school, and we're grateful for the opportunity to serve as a forum for these important issues.
Thank you, Christian. And Dean Hussey, are you still near your microphone? Want to give you the last word there, Dean.
Well, thank you very much, Doug, and thank you all for coming. Thank you for this great, robust discussion today of what's going on, and I look forward to seeing all of you next Friday.
Thank you all. Next Friday, same time, 9 a.m. local government panel, and all are welcome to join. Thank you, and we'll see you then.